Hello, how you doing? I hope you're having a really great night, morning, whatever time it is when you see this. My name is Savannah Faye, and I was just working for a couple hours, and I really I've been wanting to make this video and go more in depth on this topic, so I just had a spur of inspiration and I started to write. So I'm just gonna read it as is. It's almost 6:30 in the morning. I've been working all night, and I've been kind of nocturnal lately. It's just kind of the way it is. Sometimes I do that, and I like to get a lot of work done at night, and then I sleep when all the other people are around, so less interruption. But so I'm about to go to sleep. I'm tired, and I'm excited for everything I'm doing tomorrow. And okay, so I'm just gonna read basically it's just a rough draft. My goal was to write down some bullet points so that I could videotape the video, but I'm more of a writer than a talker, so I just went with it, and I was like, I'm just gonna do the whole thing and then I'll read it back to you guys. So I hope you can hear me well. I hope that this comes out well. Basically, I'm gonna be reading to you verbatim what comes out of my head. So, and this is about 2024. It's about finding a will to live. So here we go. I said, it starts like this. I'm just gonna read it off my computer, and I'm videotaping on my phone, so that's why my eyes are doing this. So I said, great, I feel like I need a break because I've been going for hours, and I was talking about work. I said, I'm really happy and proud, and I also want to make a YouTube video about how I was feeling suicidal last year and how I'm turning that around with every day this year. I want to talk about last year as a transitional year for me, where I finally decided to commit to my inkling that I had for about 8 years, and I started a business, The Sage in Me, but I was so caught up in relationships, and I didn't feel like I could escape this impending feeling of doom. I became more and more depressed, all the while staying in my role, or at least trying, and by role I mean the person I play in my communities. So I was trying to stay in my role, in my relationships, my role, but behind the scenes, after classes at school, in between home and school, I would be breaking down and basically begging with God or whoever's in charge of that to take me back home. And I just really felt like I wasn't feeling at home, so I was I was just like, I guess Earth really isn't my home. And I had heard about, star seeds, and, they never, sometimes they don't really resonate with Earth as their original home. And so I was just kind of like, take me back. I was like, just flip the switch, something, But let me just make sure I stay focused. I felt the weight of my calling in this life, and I saw this pain as a burden that I could no longer hold, and I was admitting, like, with humility, that, like, I wasn't up for the challenge, and that I really didn't, I did not think I was strong enough, and I just wanted to go home. And then, after I finished, like, this whole situation, like, sobbing and pleading, I would go inside and I would pretend that everything was maybe not good, but I would pretend that that didn't just happen. I would try to act normal. Like I was okay, even if I was maybe a little bit upset. I wouldn't share. I would do my best to save face and not burden others with how I felt. And the people that I did tell about those feelings, which were very few, I either told them that I felt suicidal or I had suicidal thoughts, but I wasn't anymore, as though, like, that was a thing of the past, but really it kept coming back. And I wasn't seeking community, I wasn't seeking support, I wasn't seeking help. And that was happening through the whole year, all the way up till December. And it got really bad, like, at its worst, I would say, in, like, February, March, and, like, so it was for a long time. So eventually I told my therapist. For some reason I was also scared to tell her, and I don't know why. I didn't want to make it seem too urgent or too serious. Even when I did tell her that I had been feeling suicidal, she said, "Oh, well, as long as you haven't planned anything, it's okay." And we both laughed it off, and I was like, haha, yeah, no, I haven't planned anything. But that also was not the truth. So I eventually couldn't stand it anymore, and I started brainstorming, basically, so it seemed like the only way I could feel better was to figure out how I could dip out, and how could I really end it if I couldn't handle life anymore. Almost like, as like, well, so I've had the thoughts, but then also the worry, like, what if something doesn't go right and I don't actually die, and then I'm, like, paralyzed, or, like, I'm in, like, critical care, and then then I'm in pain, and I'm alive, and I have a bunch of debt. So it's just like, okay, I really gotta figure out the right way to do it then. So I was in, like, a limbo where I was like, wow, this shit's hard to figure out. I guess as it should be. Okay. So I said, or at least, I can't keep up with this reading. It's hard to keep track of where I'm at, because I'm also paraphrasing, but let's see. So I didn't want to make my life harder and more painful. I wanted to figure out, like, what's the most sure way of doing it, and, you know, I mean, I live in New Jersey, like, you can't just go buy a gun, so, and that's really not my style, but, so, I gotta get off this subject. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, I ended up choosing a technique that I'm not going to say, but I heard about someone else doing it successfully, and it just seemed like something that I could absolutely do pretty easily. And the day that I figured that out, I felt some relief. I remember when I finally clicked that idea in my head, I stopped crying and I was able to continue my day. And part of me knew that that was because I had the choice right then and there to do it, and I was choosing not to. But so in my head I was thinking, well, that means that's a good thing, like that means I want to live. Because part of what was so upsetting was the fact that I really did want to die. That compounded it, because not only would I be feeling suicidal, but then I would be heartbroken and just like in so much pain because I really did want it, and that was like frightening to me. And so just knowing that I had a way out made me feel better. But the only problem with that is that whenever it got hard for me, whenever life got hard, which when you're up in your feelings and you're experiencing so much like emotion, you know, and feeling like there's no support, that doesn't just like, it's like almost all the time, like the overflowing. I mention it later, let me just keep reading. So the problem with that is that when things got hard, my mind instantly started to think about and imagine doing it and saying, if I can't take this, I'm gonna do it. And I'm not like the type of person, like I said I'm not scared, and it kind of was true. I've seen what to me looked like the other side before, and when someone's feeling that much pain, like when they're alive, it seems like there's a lot less to lose. You know what I mean? It's like, what do you really have to lose? The risk of the unknown isn't as frightening. So eventually I told my mom what I had been feeling, and I had a lot of oh, what is it? Hold on, I might have to pause and come back. Okay, my dog needed to go to the bathroom. Okay, so right, so I told my mom, and I hadn't told her, I wasn't clear on why. I honestly felt like I didn't want to deal with her emotions around it. So I was like, I'm better off keeping it to myself. But finally I was like, what am I protecting her for? Like honestly, like what good is it doing me? Because at this point we were stuck in a car together and she was asking me what's wrong, and I didn't want to tell her. So I was just shutting her out. And so finally I was like, you know what? I got kind of mad and I was just like, here's the truth. And I told her this year I've been feeling suicidal, and she really broke down. And what was interesting, she completely, like, that emotionally just, like, tore right to her core. And it was hard for her to deal with, but it made me feel better, which was a very interesting thing to notice, especially because recently I'd been speaking with someone and I didn't tell them how I was feeling, but I told them life's been really hard for me, and they said the equation for pressure, which has to do with like force over surface area or something like that. So he said, like, if you increase the surface area, then you decrease the pressure. And what he meant was sharing with people how you're feeling, like, just by doing that is gonna somehow lighten the load, like, because you're spreading out. And it really, I've noticed it working multiple, like, because that helped that night. And then I started telling people, oh, I'm kind of having a hard time, and it would help me feel a little bit better, that at least they knew something authentic about me. So then telling my mom made me feel a lot better, even though it upset her, which was good to know. So at this point, still things were not changing for me. I would say, like, most of it, like, it was getting better or easier, but it wasn't going away. Like, it still would come back, and I just kept feeling like I was losing all of the old like, support systems that I used to have. Like, I either didn't trust them anymore, or they just weren't there for me anymore. So again, I was getting, like, whittled down. So it kept going on until finally I asked the teacher from my Awake program, which is where I signed up earlier that year to take, like, courses to become certified in different types of holistic therapy. And I had taken a break from it for, like, a couple months. Like, when I was really, like, going through it. Like, I just, like, stopped believing, and I kind of, like, I started the business, I started the school, and then I just was like, what am I doing? But anyways, so I asked Rebecca, the teacher of a class, I'd been wanting to ask her for a while about death's doors, because it's a topic, and it's a whole topic of its own that I was learning about in my psychedelic plant medicine course. So obviously I didn't want to bring up the whole thing, I just was curious about it, because part of me was thinking maybe I can, like, maybe some part of me is, like, feeling like I'm, like, this whole, it's hard to explain. I don't want to get into that in this video. It just that's not really on the same topic. But anyways, so I just brought it up. I asked her about death doors, and the moment I asked her, she couldn't breathe, and she literally said, like, I have to leave. She had to go into her hallway and, like, ground herself and, like, do the thing, right? So she came back, because she's very sensitive psychic. So basically, when I brought up the question and she tried to, like, tap into it so she could answer me, right? Because that's, like, what we're learning in the course is about, like, really, like, feeling into what someone's saying to get to the core. And what she experienced. So yes, okay, I'm starting to babble. So this was a turning point for me because she was talking about how I need to be serious about turning this around. So being a sensitive, intuitive individual, it's very common for someone like that to be affected by energies and emotions of the people and places around them. That's really important. I'll say it again. An intuitive, a sensitive, intuitive individual it's going to be very common for someone like that to be affected by the energies and emotions of the people and places around them. So, even just forgetting or just setting aside the fact that you might have trauma and healing that you need to do, right? So even move that aside. And now if you're a intuitive, sensitive person and you don't know how to protect your energy, you're going to be affected by things a lot more, and things are going to stick to you, especially if you've experienced trauma. I'm just trying to explain it real quick. Like, negative energy, traumatic energy is going to stick to you because it's resonating with your own trauma, and in its own weird way, you're attracting that to you to help you trigger and heal it. But so let me get back on track. So she said, you need to get serious about turning this around. So I'd already done so much healing. Like, I want to curse about it. Like a beep load of shadow work. I didn't want to keep going down into, like, that place to dig it out. Like, I just felt like that was kind of done for me for now. And I hadn't been... Why am I not just reading this? So, this was the depths surfacing. So I'm not digging into it, but it's surfacing up on me, because I used to use hypnotherapy to go into my unconscious, or like the subconscious mind, and I would go and I would can I explain it? I would track a program to a key moment in my life, because they have this, it's hard to explain, and that's not what this video is about, so I'm not going to explain that in this video. So where was I? This was the turning point. She said I have to really, get serious about turning this around. And because I'm sensitive and highly sensitive and intuitive, it's even more important that I started to, really put the reins on this, wild horse. So all of the darkness and the shit from down deep below was surfacing, and I needed a new way to approach it so that would work for me, practically. So what Rebecca told me that day because she could tell that it was serious. So she has like been a therapist for many years, and she's seen people who were feeling suicidal who had later, like, at least like one person who had actually done it. So she took it seriously, and she told me that anytime emotions come up, go and ground. So whenever, like, so wherever my special place was, like going outside, putting my hands on the earth and breathing, or for me, taking a shower and letting the water run down over my face, or like a bath with crystals in it. Those were ways that I liked to recenter. And it was important that I changed my mind when those thoughts came up again. So I needed to stop the hamster wheel from spinning. I did that by bringing my awareness when it happened and choosing to change my thoughts. So remember this. I've done a lot of sessions on myself with hypnotherapy, working with crystals, and energy work. So I've done a lot, and I'm saying that because I want you to know that in case you are someone who is struggling with this, to be patient with yourself and seek help. So what Rebecca explained is that people in our age group, like the 20-somethings, there are a lot of us, apparently, who are spiritual warriors, so to speak, and the way I wrote it is, we're not down with the bullshit. And so there's this willingness to face the unknown of death. And she was explaining to me that in itself takes great bravery, and it takes like a warrior spirit to like consider that realistically, and it takes a lot of determination. So she said, take that energy, take that strength and that drive, and focus it now on what I want. So I was explaining to her how I was looking at a life. That's the way I wrote it. I was explaining to her how I was looking at a life full of choices that I made that made me feel trapped. I didn't feel free. I felt chained. I felt completely suffocated by my own choices, like there was no way out. And I said to her, maybe she said, like, did you ever think of just leaving? And I was like, but I don't want to just jump ship. And I was trying to stay on course, and she said, but that's literally what you're gonna do. Like, jumping ship is like the most extreme, like, suicide is the most extreme way of jumping ship. So she was like, so if dying means being free and dropping everything in my life, leaving everyone behind that I knew, everything I knew, for this feeling of freedom that I saw as being like death was the only way I could get it, which I know it sounds silly, but does it sound silly? I don't know, but that's the way it seemed to me, and it really felt. And so she was saying, like, then you may as well just leave and, like, disappear from everything and everyone for the sake of this freedom and for your happiness and for the sake of, like, living a life that's worth living, right? So I've heard that when someone is suicidal, it is a spiritual, metaphorical death that they are really craving. And I can sort of see that now, looking back at last year, in her own way. Like, that girl, that person that I was, like, I feel like I'm no longer that person. Like, they found rest, and in, like, their own way, there was a sort of death there. Because that, like, state of being isn't anymore. So I've heard that at 25, a woman's brain finishes developing, and I definitely felt 25 years old, which was last year, 2024 for me. I felt it like a sack of bricks because life was knocking at my door and it was frightening. I was feeling like a kid, but wanting to step into adulthood and wanting to take all the love and the freedom, the hope and the joy from childhood with me, and it felt like that was being torn from me. Like, I couldn't take it into this world where, like, you don't really see that. Like, I don't know, like, I feel like most adults, you're not, I don't know. You might know what I mean. So the most important part of 2024, in a way, was in December. Well, definitely was in December, after I talked with Rebecca. That's when I had to step into my power and really spell out what committing to life was going to look like for me. There were certain things that obviously had to be non-negotiables. What was that freedom that I wanted? Even though I didn't know the answer yet, I knew the energetic imprint of that feeling. So I had a guiding light there, and little by little, as the thoughts and feelings recycled and resurfaced, the suicidal thoughts, as they continued to come back up, as they had been before, I started to stand in my resilience and say, no, I'm going to be brave, I'm going to be strong, I'm going to be free. I started asking myself questions like, what would it look like if I did drop everything and do exactly what I want so that I can feel life is worth living? Not just good enough, but really worth my whole heart and my soul. And what I received for my personal journey had to do with a first step. So I didn't know the whole path, I still don't, but I'm choosing to trust my life and to trust my gut and my heart, my guides, and God. And this whole experience has kind of introduced me to God, or at least it feels that way, since my commitment to life, death has been pertinent in my experience. My bird died, and I often identify with birds because my mom calls herself the sparrow. The house we live in is called the nest. And then, like, I think, like, this place in South Carolina I go to, we call, like, there's this, like, little, like, living space in a shed, like, above a shed, and we call it, like, the birdhouse, I think. So I got this bird, let's see, and the store clipped the bird's wings before they gave it to me, and then the bird was living in a cage in my room. So it went to fly, but its wings were clipped, and it fell, and it was killed. And it died in my hands. And this was a huge download for me. I was really, like, I couldn't, like, I was sobbing so much I couldn't breathe. I was shaking. I could hardly deal with how close to this, like, veil I felt. Because the bird was, like, the epitome of, like, purity, innocence, love, and, like, it was so vulnerable, and, like, it trusted me, and so fragile. Like, it was tiny. It was so delicate. And so then I, like, take that, and there's, like, a part of my own soul that, like, I see that way. And it was like God was showing me myself. And I didn't know. Oh, I said I don't know if I can explain how it felt because of the way I felt about this bird. But the fact that she was not free, and that even though she had this spirit to fly, she wasn't able to. And so she died. And after that, for days, I kept imagining. That's my dog. Hold on. She was trying to get a bone. So I kept seeing this bird like fluttering around me and flying around me for days. I would go for a walk and I just would be crying, and I would be like, I feel her with me, and I feel like she's able to fly now. And it was a lot to process, because in a way I was seeing how that, like, I was almost imagining it like she chose death as a way of like helping to teach me. And also it did free her in the way that I like wanted to feel free, in that like metaphorical way. So I kept integrating this and doing sessions on it, and like healing from this experience, and like working with other friends who are healers, and like getting their insight and their like psychic like on it. And so the bird, it was hard because the bird was a representation of all of it for me. And then Jupiter baby, why do you have to take it on the floor? Just keep it on there, baby. Yeah, so this is crazy. So about 2 weeks later, I was at my mom's ex-boyfriend's house, and he got a phone call, and I could tell it was serious right away. He had to leave the room, and he came back out, and he told us that like someone who's really like literally a brother to him, his nephew committed suicide. And so that was very, so you can imagine like his brother is going through it, so now it's a conversation in the whole room about suicide, you know, because everyone's trying to figure out how could this happen. So basically I watched everyone, their facial expressions. I could feel the energy in the room. I could see my mom's eyes. She looked at me and she didn't say anything, but I could feel like this, like, she was holding back a lot of like kind of like terror a little bit about like how she's so scared of this happening to her with me. And people were saying that it was like that's selfish to commit suicide, and how it was so unexpected, no one saw it coming. And I just sat there and like I felt like I understood what he was going through, and it definitely was not out of the blue. I knew what it felt like to hold all of that hurt for everyone else. Even if it overflows sometimes, that doesn't stop it, you know? So it's still there. It's still constantly on the brim of overflowing. Or at least that's how it feels. And it's a really hard place to be in all the time. So if I hadn't started to tell people about it and get the help that I needed, so hearing about this guy's suicide, a man I didn't know, but it just showed me something, and I felt at peace with it because I knew that in his own way, like, he did find peace. And it helped me to also see that I was still holding this energetic imprint of suicide in my energetic field. That's why it was showing up for me again, because it still was something that, like, wasn't fully learned. Like, the lesson wasn't done being learned, and, like, part of it was, like, me now seeing it affect others, and, like, seeing the, like, okay, well, this is what happens when you go through with it, like, you know. And also, hearing about him also made me think about how other people really are feeling the same way that I was last year. And that some people are still feeling that way now. And I just, like, I pray that if they are, that they hear this message from me or from anybody else who is sharing this type of message, because I know that it goes a really long way to have hope, and I would hate to have anyone feel the way that I did, and it makes me sad to imagine so many people being in pain, because, I mean, it's self-explanatory, but I don't think anyone would have guessed, and I don't think anybody would have, no, I don't think anybody was guessing that I was feeling that way. Everyone said that it seemed that they seemed to think that this man who killed himself wasn't feeling that way, and he was young too. I think he was in his 30s. So the point is, just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean there aren't people feeling that way. So now, allow me to talk about the solution. So I still have lows, I still dip, but when I do, I quickly ground myself. For example, my dog, she was spayed. It's a major surgery, and about 5 days later, kind of out of the blue, she was bleeding out of her incision. She was in a lot of pain, and I didn't have money at this point. I spent the last of my money on the bird. So I was just like very distraught, and I was like, if she needs like something expensive, I might have to give her up to someone, like to the vet, or because like I might be able to give her up if I can't pay for it, and they'll just like find someone to adopt her. I was afraid she could die. So I was feeling overwhelmed, and I just went outside, I cried, I put my hands on the ground, and I breathed. And I've gotten really good at telling myself, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's gonna be okay, you're okay. It started with me saying one thing, and then the more that I did it, the more it became muscle memory. And because it comforts me, the words just automatically start to run through my consciousness when I need it. So I even sometimes rub my arms with my hands to comfort and hold myself. And that moment outside, after that moment outside, I was able to walk back in. I was breathing shakily, but I was ready to take on whatever came next. So stuff like that really helps. Juju, no. No, Juju. She might have to go in the crate. I gotta pause this again. Yeah, because it's really her bedtime. She should be sleeping right now, but I'm awake and the lights are on, so she's a little restless. Also, when I get upset, she gets more restless. So let's see, where was I? So yeah, stuff like that really, really, really helps. Some other things I've started saying to myself is, you're doing such a good job. I'm so proud of you. I love you. You are loved. You're so sweet. You deserve so much love. You're doing such a good job. And literally, it sounds simple, but when you think about the stark difference between those thoughts and then the suicidal thoughts, it's like I said, it's like comparing a warm trickle of water to like a cold tsunami. It's a huge difference. So I'm just gonna keep going because there's more to say about that, but I'm gonna continue with what I wrote. Recently I was doing a meditation just a few days ago to connect with my divine masculine, to feel his love, like for whoever that might actually be. Or I don't know if, like, because when I'm looking at it like a soulmate, or some people say like twin flames, it's like they might not even be incarnated, but so let me just keep going here. So it's a play on words because my divine masculine is the divine masculinity that is within me. And I think growing up, because of the relationship that I had with my father, that relationship with like this like loving, protective, like non-egotistical, divine, pure masculinity, healthy masculinity, let's say healthy masculinity, I didn't have that. So I was actually in this meditation able to connect with that energy. It was it was like so loving, and it was protective. It was discerning, powerful, like firepower, horsepower. And what I noticed was that this energy, this divine masculine, it wanted me to take those downloads of that energy into myself and to integrate them into myself. So that's what I mean by like, it's like I'm talking about it like it's different from myself, but really it is myself. It's like an embodiment of the yin and the yang, right? So it's the yang energy. I felt like I was connected, and that in that connection there was so much love pouring into me and out. So like I imagined it like our hearts were two like balls of light that were meeting, and like in that meeting, in that connection, there was an outpouring of love. So in the end of the meditation, when it was time to finish up and like come back into my body and back into the present moment, I felt my heart recoiling, and like a little bit of like dread was kind of coming onto me, like now I have to go back to feeling alone and like to not feeling this love until the next time that I do this. And it made me sad to imagine being without that connection. And instantly my divine masculine, like this energy, told me that I didn't have to disconnect from it. He said that we could stay connected if I just intended it to be so. So I did that. I intended that our spirits, energies, hearts remain connected. And I knew, or he told me in a way that this would mean, I'm having a hard time reading. This would mean that I would stay in his love moving forwards, in that same protection, and you know what I mean? All that energy, everything downloaded in, and I'll also stay in the love connection. And this was, so then today is like day 3 of me being in that energy. It's very new. That was Sunday, which ironically was January 19th. And 19 was the number on my bird's anklet, which I wear on my necklace now, as a reminder of her and my commitment to freedom and life. Ironically, like part of why I bought her is because her birthday, so her like life path number was 19 also. Life path number is not your birthday, but I added it up and it was 19. Her anklet was 19. I was like, that's a wild synchronicity. 1s have to do with new beginnings, 9s have to do with endings. And I purchased her as an acknowledgement that I was stepping into parts of myself that I hadn't accepted before. And I was stepping into this acceptance of self-expression and like taking that with me into 2025. So anyways, it's been 3 nights since I did that meditation and had the epiphany about living in love. And honestly, I have still had moments of frustration, dips, doubts, and worries. But every time it happened, I would assure myself that whatever happened, I got this. And I say that. I'm like, I'll look in the mirror and I'll say, I've got this. I got this. Whatever obstacle I'm going to overcome, because it really is at this point freedom or death for me. So obstacles cease to exist, they cease to matter, because every step of the way is a step where you're choosing freedom. So it's not like, oh, like it's miles and miles until I'm free because I have this obstacle that is miles long, like let's say a mountain, right? People like to use that for obstacles in imagery. No, you don't have to be at the other side of the mountain to be free. In my scenario, like each step is a step of freedom. And that's the way that I keep looking at it. So I keep going, and when I feel disconnected from love, it seems like it's always because I'm placing it externally, which is something that I've heard a gazillion times, but I'm starting to actually integrate that knowledge, and like almost like, so like viscerally, like in my freaking like body, my DNA, I'm starting to understand it. And when I wonder why can I feel it, why can't I feel it, like why can't I feel it, like, and I, like there's something wrong, it's a bit of like a victim mentality moment. And then, for example, tonight when that happened, I started working on my escape route, on my freedom, on my business. And it's really the perfect way for me to channel this, because the purpose of my business is to help others. So now part of me sharing this is because it feels right to share, because I remember not sharing it. And then I'm thinking of all the other people who might be experiencing that, and they don't have the support that I had. And I feel like part of my calling is to be that support for people. If there is like someone, especially like people like my age or younger, like if they didn't have support, that's extremely hard. So it all just kind of fits in perfectly, and that's why I decided to write this after like I was working for a couple hours on my website, and then I finally was like tired, and I just like this whole thing, I just wrote it straight up as I'm reading. Like I wrote it the way I'm reading it. I didn't really edit this. So I heard something really interesting recently, and it was about a baby goat. I saw a video on Instagram, I think, or YouTube. So her mom had 2 baby goats. And so one of the baby goats she rejected, and the farmer was videotaping it, and he didn't know why, but he was explaining how he was actually so excited to raise that other baby goat himself, because we all know that's awesome. But that the baby goat didn't know that, and the baby goat kept trying to go back to its mom. In the video, literally kept trying to go back to its mom and like suckle at her breast, right? Like that's what you would do. And the mom would buck her, literally like attack her, like get the beep away. And the baby goat just kept trying to go back, and it kept cycling. And all the while, the farmer was talking about how in life this happens to some people, where the person who was supposed to protect and love and nurture us, like whoever that is, or, you know, we might think it should be, or any way you want to spin it, he said when that person who should have been taking care of us isn't able to, he said maybe it's because the shepherd wanted you for himself. And it was just a very visceral metaphor, because he literally was the shepherd of this goat. And he was excited to take care of it, but the poor little goat was just doing all it could to like survive and to like escape this fear of like being abandoned by the one that should love it and protect it and take care of it. He was saying like if this is the case for you, maybe it's because like God really wanted that one-on-one time with you to like take you and like raise you as his own, basically. And it clicked for me with that video, because religion has been hard for me in my personal journey, for my own reasons. And I turned to spirituality, but I never was able to see the connection between the two. And like, but I feel like I'm starting to get it. And I guess I associate with that baby goat, and I feel like I feel like in my own way, like this is the shepherd taking me home, and I'm like learning to trust that I'm gonna be safe, and I'm calling the energy I connected with on Sunday like my divine masculine, and it really felt that way. And there was absolutely this sense of like romance novel vibes with this divine masculine, in that way, and to the point that it'll like make me blush when I like think about it, you know. But the connection and the love that happened when that channel was opened and when the two were combined, and now that connection like is stable, like that continuation of love is there. And then if you look at the idea of like me integrating this part of myself so I can be more whole now, so that in there is kind of what I'm starting to look at as God, and it makes me feel special that I get to, you know, be one of the ones that are chosen to like get this closer relationship with that. So I'm going to keep going in this crazy thing called life. I hope that this just reaches somebody, and I hope that everyone has a lovely day. And in case I don't see you, like the Truman Show, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.